right, let's see. Gotta put this thing away somewhere. This is my old camera here. It suffered a malfunction that allows the battery inside of it to stay in whenever you put the battery in. And so whenever I use it, I have to have it connected to an external battery through the little USB port there, which is a bit of a pain, but it actually does still work pretty well as a camera. I got a replacement, but I don't like the quality of the audio that this replacement camera has. So if I want to have some chance at having some sound that people just won't scream and run away from, I kind of have to stick with this camera until I can afford to get another one similar to this or better. But that is the way it is sometimes whenever you're doing this sort of stuff. Hello, good people. Hi, Jason here with Green Country Agroforestry. It is 8:30 some odd p.m. Wednesday night, time for another live stream. Good to see everybody here. We got John H. Stevenson. We've got Billy at the Wickshire Project, Grandma Zoo, Pick It and Eat It, with her own copy of Grow and Die, or Grow and Die. Hopefully it's not Grow and Die. Grow or Die, this book right here, available from Good Books. That is David the Good's own publishing company, Good Books, and of course available on Amazon.com. I picked this copy up for about $17 and a little bit of what? I didn't specify what you have to smoke. It just said smoke them if you got them. There we go. So I picked this up for about $18 or so, a little bit of change. I've obviously made some reference marks in it, so we'll visit some of that stuff. I've got some of my own thoughts on hand tools, obviously, right? I do a lot of this sort of stuff. Hugo Homestead is with us. Carolyn's Food Force is with us. Sasspress Bread is with us. Of course, Barry is checking in with us from somewhere in Tejas tonight. Mary, they managed to get your truck worked on, or are you still stranded? Do you have time to start a garden while you're stuck in Texas? All right. For starters, wow, we got 10 people in the house already. Thank you very much for showing up. If David happens to show up and join us later on and is inclined to do so, I'll shoot him a link, and we can discuss this thing a little bit more in depth together. And just to show you how horribly prepared I am, I was intending to pull out a copy of the U.S. Department of was it the U.S. Department of Agriculture? Yes, U.S. Department of Agriculture's Living on an Acre, one of the copies of that we have around here, and do a little compare and contrast. But I don't think we're going to do that because this is not as near as tough a read as that particular volume, which is a lot more in depth on a lot of different things, which is not to say that this is not a good book at all, because there are certain things that I look for in a book. There are certain things that I would look for if I was writing this particular type of book. And I should probably explain. Whenever I sit down and look for a book, I'm looking for something that has information that I don't already have up here for the most part, right? And I've got a lot of stuff rattling around up here because I read a lot. Some of it gets retained. Some of it, though, it goes into that, I can look this up later if I need to know it. And so the books that I want are things that are full of those little bits and pieces that I can reference to later, I can look at later to remind me of those things that I don't necessarily want to have running around in my head 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, lists and things like that. There are just those bits of information that I don't necessarily want to have that I think about all the time. And so the thing that I would put into a book are the things that I don't necessarily want to be thinking of all the time, which is kind of different than what necessarily everybody else would be looking for in a book. All right. So relative value of Living on an Acre versus Grow or Die. It's apples and oranges. It's two entirely different things. You're going to get something different from each. So without further ado, let's jump in here. I'm gonna read you the back here, which anybody can look at whenever you go to Amazon. All right. What if everything collapsed tomorrow? What if the supermarkets were emptied? What if you have never planted a garden in your life and now your life depends upon you growing your own food? Don't panic. Hey, that's great advice. It's very comforting. You should see that on the front of a book somewhere. In this groundbreaking guide to survival gardening, you'll learn to 1. Grow crops without irrigation. 2. Find and use hand tools for tilling, weeding, and more. 3, control pests. I'm adding the numbers, by the way. There's just ... here. Control pests naturally without relying on poisons. Grow the crops that will keep you alive. Preserve your harvest. Figure out how much space you need to feed your family. Plant a garden from items that you'll find in a typical pantry. Have peace of mind no matter what happens to the economy. It's time to quit worrying about the future and do something about it. Expert gardener and teacher David the Good shows you how. That's the promise that we have on the back of this book right here. All right. So the question is, does it deliver on this particular promise? That would be important, right? Before you buy this thing, it tells you a bunch of stuff that's going to do here. Does it deliver on it? Always nice to know that you're buying a quality product. Well, for starters, if you're familiar with David's previous writing, you know he has a particular style and humor to his writing. All of that's still in here. You may be familiar with lots of drawings and sketches in some of his other books. There are not a lot of drawings and sketches in this particular book. There are only 2 illustrations that I found, and those are wonderful illustrations, although granted, yes, the book could probably have been made without it. They're actually not even really gardening related illustrations at all. One of is a means of launching potatoes, and the other one's a means of producing vinegar for various reasons. Of course, there's a stage in between the being a fruit and being a vinegar that you might want to do something else with that product. That's entirely up to you. Those are the 2 illustrations that are in the book: how to make homemade hooch and how to build a potato again. Why they're in here, I don't know, but I'm glad they are. We'll put it that way. I just had to smile when I saw those 2 illustrations. They're cool. I suppose let's get into it. I marked here pages that I want to pay some attention to. We're going to skip over the introduction because I'm providing my own, and go straight on into the first chapter, which is methods. And David goes into some detail about the methods that he's found that are particularly useful for him and the way he likes to garden. He does touch on some of the ones that are more common, and we have some different ways of doing things, and in a lot of ways that are very much the same. We'll put it that way. None of the methods that he mentions here are bad. Many of them are quite good, and I will move on. Nothing wrong with the methods mentioned here. It could be more comprehensive, I think. But once again, this is not that big of a book. You'd have to add extra chapters for some of these things. And sometimes you'd have to add like chapters supporting the chapters so you'd know what the chapter was about by the time you got to it. Chapter 3, tools. Oh, this is the one where I wanted to spend more time. We're just gonna move my marker over here, right here. We're going to spend some time on chapter 3, tools. We're going to talk about hand tools, of course. And David breaks down a whole bunch of things that he's discovered on hand tools. I'm going to start right in on one of the very first things that he talks about, using the gasoline powered tiller. Yeah, we've done that. It's horrible. I mean, to get a really good result, you'd have to get one of those really, really big industrial sized ones. The little ones that you can walk behind, they just don't dig in deep enough. They're certainly not great for busting up sod. If you've already got an area that's manageable, you could use it to cultivate. But then again, if it's already manageable, you don't need the power tool to cultivate, right? So yeah, I absolutely agree. It's not fun. Follows up with another gadget right here that he talks about that I believe they market this thing, if you saw it on late night TV, as the garden claw. And it turns out that, well, he has a low opinion of it. Mary got one of these as well. Let me pull this thing. Okay, maybe you can see it. We are on a green screen, but there isn't enough of a difference in coloration there. You kind of make it out. You have the claw, the tines right here. They're a little bit twisted there. And then your handle has, the things that are on either side. Now, David did not like this particular tool at all. It's kind of gimmicky and didn't see much use for it. I actually did find a practical use for this tool. Granted, yeah, you're not going to use this for most of your cultivation and stuff. But where this was actually very useful is whenever you've got individual clumping grasses that have very, very strong root systems, and it's hard to get your spading fork in. I haven't tried with a broad fork, but a spading fork, it's a bit much for the spading fork to get in there in between deeply rooted clumping grasses and break those up. So this was excellent. You just get to that one clump, sink it in, and yeah, you do have to step in it, and it does require a bit more force. It is a workout, nice core body workout, incidentally, but it will actually get in there and sever those those roots down there at the ground level of those clumping grasses and make it possible for you to pull them out. Once they're out, you can do the work with your spading fork or your broad fork if you've got one. I don't have one. I would like one, but I have been making do with the spading fork, which he does mention as well in here. So if you have a large amount of space to cover, broad fork, definitely. This thing, more of a special application tool. If you just happen to have a lot of that problem grass that's clumping like that, you might want to borrow one of these from somebody who has one. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and buy one yourself. My main complaint about this particular design is this handle is held together with a bolt here, and it really does need to just be welded in place so it's a good, solid, sturdy handle, and it doesn't wobble back and forth. You waste a lot of energy with that wobble there, and it's definitely going to put wear and tear. See, I don't know if you can see there, but there's a bit of wear right around where that screw goes through, right? From where it's bounced back and forth and back and forth. And eventually that will cause this tool to fail. So problems with the design, it is a special application tool, but I did find a proper use for it. So there you go. Take that, David the Good. Nar. Moving on. different tools and applications. David talked a lot about his choice in hose in the same section, and there's a lot of good information on hose. Let me move this thing out of the way. I did bring a whole bunch of tools into the house. Grandma Zoo says, yeah, I'm too weak for that tool. Yes, this is one of those things where you don't want to use it for everything. But if you do have that one particular type of grass, and I used it on Mondo grass, and it worked great on Mondo grass. But if you don't have that, it's not going to work that well. I don't imagine it would work anywhere near as well on Bermuda. Bermuda, all it's going to do is chop it up into a whole bunch of different little pieces, and every one of them is going to grow a new plant. So that's no good, right? You don't want to do that. You want to totally eradicate that stuff. Moving on, David talked a little bit about hose. We're still in chapter 3, hand tools. And one of the ones that he mentioned was a grub hoe. A grub hoe is... Yeah, David likes to broad fork. I would love, like I said, I would love to have one. It hasn't become a necessity for me yet because I'm only doing gardening on 1/3 of an acre, and not all the 1/3 of an acre needs to be forked on a regular basis, right? Especially the way I'm doing breaking up the soil and aeration and tillage now, using plants to do it instead of lots of manual effort. But one of the hoses they mentioned that you can get from easydigging.com, and there's some things that they have there. But I have found that you don't necessarily need the grub hoe if you happen to have one of these handy little tools. And I'm going to move it from behind right there. This is a pickaxe. That's right. You want something that can tear through stones, rocks, gravel, get under roots. You might want to get another version of this that has the axe head as well for cutting roots, although I have another tool that's kind of handy for cutting roots, depending upon how big they are. But either this one or the axe-headed version, or both combinations of excellent tools whenever you're excavating, particularly on rocky terrain, clay terrain. You're out shield land. You're out there where Billy is, where you've got that much topsoil plus rock. These are great. These are awesome. Yes.
We use the Matic, the axe-headed version of that, for digging trenches to the rocky stuff by the airport specifically.
Yep. The pick is good whenever your rocks are a little bit bigger. Anyway, there you go. So grub hoe, or get the tool that will do the job of the grub hoe plus a little bit extra. Incidentally, I've used this for cutting a furrow, kind of like, and if I had a longer version of this, it would be kind of like you'd have to be a lot longer, like a manual subsoiler. But anyway, let's put this someplace where I will not bonk myself in the head with it. How about right here? That sounds good. All right. And then the other type of hoe that he mentioned of being particularly worth, but kind of hard to find, is called a ridging hoe. Ridging hoe is more of a plowing tool, and this one is a lighter version. It's actually kind of built for medium duty. I believe they would call this one more of a Warren hoe, would be the particular style. But as you can see, triangular head here, and is good for making furrows. So if you don't have the room or inclination to hitch up the oxen or have a tractor whenever you're conducting gardening, because you're just growing vegetables for a family of 5, 10, 20, however many of you there are at the moment. You don't necessarily need the big equipment, but you do need to make furrows. And this one, oh, sorry, I'm moving it so you can't see it. Yeah, you do need to make furrows, and this particular tool is excellent for making those furrows. And if you were watching the corn planting video that I did recently, you saw me using this one to do all of the technically plowing in that area to plant the corn beds. So there we go. Simple hand tool. 100% hand tool gardening, I think it was called. I need a meat cleaver with on a pole I can step on. Any tips? Pole axes. Yeah, there you go. All right. So, and then Brian's saying I always wanted one of those saddle stirrup hoes for weeding. A stirrup hoe or scuffle hoe. Those guys are great for weeding if you're doing surface disruption for weed control. I don't like to use surface disruption for weed control, so I don't use one of those. I know, right? It's horrible. Wait, instead of doing that, I try to encourage the soil seed bank to be filled with lots and lots and lots and lots of very, very prostrate ground cover that won't be an interference with the things I'm trying to grow. Whenever I do some disruption to plant what I'm looking for, I knock it back a bit, but it grows back eventually. So it fills in the gaps and it keeps the soil alive, and I don't worry about it. All right. Let's see what's else on my list. All right. David mentions in chapter 3, pitchforks. I say, pah, you don't need a pitchfork. This is what you need right here. This is called a manuring fork. And you notice it has quite a few tines, and it's a little bit beefy, but it's not huge. It has a shorter handle. So you have your point of action and your leverage a lot closer down to the place where you're picking up at with this particular type of tool. Pitchforks are for hay. Manuring forks for compost. You're not really going to be handling a lot of hay. Get the manuring fork. All right. And incidentally, you can use the manuring fork for handling hay too. So, okay, moving right along. This is a tool that isn't even mentioned in the book. I know, right? Supposed to be doing a book review. This is a tool that isn't even mentioned in the book, but he doesn't get into into livestock too much. But this is called a stockman's cane. But I use the stockman's canes for things other than livestock. If you notice the picture behind me, we've got trees, and the trees have fruits. Well, this is actually a pecan tree, but it works in pecans and it works to other trees as well. The hook right there at the end is excellent for reaching up, grabbing a hold of branches, bringing them down to within picking range for low-hanging branches. And of course, on fruit trees, I like to keep them pruned to the point where all the fruits are now within reach of the stockman's cane. That's just and you can also use it for herding livestock. Very effective for herding livestock as well. Okay, moving on. David mentioned his hand sickle, which was an antique. Hand sickles are wonderful. David's kid makes handmade hand sickles, and there's available for sale. I don't know the exact link for it off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but you have a look at David's channel. You'll be able to find links to those sickles, and occasionally he makes some. And if you'd like a handmade sickle, they're kind of cool. This thing is made in Taiwan, and it's a little bit beefier. This is what you would call a billhook sickle. So it is a kind of a hybrid between a billhook and a sickle. It's a little bit heftier. You can use it for your grass cutting. You can use it for your wheat harvest, but you can also cut and prune small branches, roots, and other things with this as well. And if you are so inclined, you may take it and lay it horizontally to the grass and just pull it right through and pull it back through again, and you've just mowed. Yeah. So handle with care, very sharp. It's easy to cut yourself with these. Very effective though. The last time I saw these were about $20 on Amazon. Made in Taiwan, not China. I don't think this is a full tang though, so don't put too much pressure on the back end here. Hold more up here. Okay, where were we? I love this tool. I got a couple of them. One of these days, I may actually sell them. Of course, another tool that we love is hori knives. Just kind of like it's kind of like a garden trowel plus a little extra, right? You got a serrated edge there for doing some cutting and pruning. The knife edge isn't all that sharp, really. You could take some effort to sharpen it up if you want to. We've got measurements along the blade, so you can check soil depth. Just generally all around, fairly decent tool. If you have bulbs and stuff like that you want to pick up, transplant, do a little bit of pruning while you're at it. Don't want to have a whole lot of tools in your garden tool bag. Hori knife and a little billhook sickle there are going to get you well on your way. There's one more here that I like for up close and personal work, and that's this little thing. You may have seen this if you guys are channel members. In the custom emojis, there's a little smiley face guy, and he's got one of these in his hand. But this is a kind of handy little thing. Mary got this in a bundle of other tools that are like, I don't really care. But this one's kind of nice by itself. You got the little fork right there on the one side, a little tiny hoe on the other side. And guys, very, very handy whenever you need to get in there and just do a little quick aeration and disturbance of the soil surface, get some roots out, stuff like that. If you need to chop something a bit, you've got that handy there. These are fairly useful. So there you go. I mean, yeah. All right. What's going on? I think I cleared out chapter 3. How y'all doing? Is everything good? Chapter 3. A little bit different style and tools are choices, but he does make very good solid choices. So I'm not going to gripe too much. I just add more tools. Of course, we agree. Shovels. You got to have shovels. We agree on rakes. Yeah. I'd like to see someday a rake, like a couple of varieties of rake. Maybe a two-headed rake. A rake that has a few long tines on the back side of it, right? With wide spacing. And then the bottom side of it, so to have tines on both sides of the head, you just flip it, right? Go on one side or the other. And then the bottom side of it would have your regular bow rake or bow rake type tines, a little bit more of a hook at the tips, because if you've got a little bit of a hook, then you can grab those weeds and flip them out of the beds whenever you're using your rake. Makes it a little bit easier. And then if you're just looking to go through and do leveling and check and see if there's any roots that you haven't pulled out, use the longer tines to get deeper down into the soil surface to pull through there. So you'd have a two-sided rake, kind of like this little hand tool is two tools in one. One head's a hoe and the other head's a fork. You could have a rake that has wider tined rake tines on the one side, and then the closer, narrower standard bow rake tines on the other. I think that would be a cool tool if anybody's out there thinking about how to make another $1 million on brand new garden gadgets that, of course, we're all going to have to go and buy, right? All right, tools. You got to have them, and of course, make sure they're tools that are going to stand up to the work that you're going to be doing with them. All right. Now this is odd. Okay, we said grow crops without irrigation, find and use hand tools, control pests. We've gone through a couple of things. We already got to the tools, and I haven't heard anything about irrigation, but he put irrigation in chapter 4. So here it goes. Chapter 4 is irrigation. Water is the key to life. Yep. That's all true. All right. Goes in a bit about rain barrows, ponds, and pools, and things that you can do for ponds and pools, and says, and I quote, if you're lucky enough to have a large in-ground pool, you can do the same with that in a pinch, talking about turning it into a pond. Unless you're planning on having bikini and beer parties throughout the end of the world as we know it. If so, please send an invitation to David the Good, care of Econopocalypse Ranch, 6078 Tick Road, Sticksville, Florida. Okay, David, we do intend to have bikini parties with beer. So you're invited. I don't think this address is going to work though. All right. Other methods for irrigation. Of course, if you've been following us, then you know I've got some special tricks for keeping water in the soil. Those are worth checking out. Matter of fact, some very recent videos I've done have demonstrated a couple of those techniques for getting water in and on your soil. All right, moving right along. Comprehensive mentions a yoke with 2 buckets. Chapter 6, pest control. All right. It's hard, right, to put everything you need to know about pest control into one spot. And there's a lot of things actually that we're already doing for pest control and a lot of things that you guys already know about for pest control. So we're not going to add a whole lot of extra things, except there are a couple recipes David puts in here, which I will not detail because then you wouldn't have a reason to buy the book. So buy the book. There's a couple recipes in here for making your own stuff to keep the critters off your stuff. And something that I found very, very, very interesting. It's called crop rotation. If you guys haven't heard about crop rotation, well, maybe you've heard something about crop rotation where you talk about, don't plant the same thing in the same spot. Well, David talks about don't plant the same family of things in the same spot and gives if you like lists, gives a list right here on page 71 through 72 with a 5-year rotation, which, nope, you can't read it. Sorry. 5-year rotation of the different things that you can move into and out of those beds. And you could have all of these things and be just doing a constant rotation, 5 different beds. Boom. This year is this bed, this year is this bed, this year is this, and then just rotate them. And you will have for 5 years in a row, not even the same family of thing being planted in the same spot. So there we go. Now, crop rotation with a schedule that you could follow for crop rotation if you didn't want to have to worry about it. If you don't want to have to think about it, if you want something to follow, if you want a list, one of those convenient things, right? I don't want to have to think about it. I was like, let me look at this list. Okay, what's in the list? Boom, 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 boom. And then I'll just do that, right? That's convenient. Nice bit of information to have. Crop rotation list. And then we've got just a big old list of different crops and things that you can grow. I believe there's one of the illustrations. Suggestions on things to do with excess potatoes. Hey, it's ammunition. Some discussion about other things, including, of course, corn and what you look for in a good corn. He doesn't mention buy Big Horse Spotted Corn from Green Country Agroforest specifically, but he wrote this book before I started selling it, so that's just fine. That's just fine. Chapter 8 is where we get to preserving the harvest. I won't spoil the surprise, but there are several different methods in here, including canning, drying, fermenting, so on and so forth. Recipe for sauerkraut. If you like a recipe for sauerkraut, it's right in there. And then, of course, fermenting. Oh, this isn't fermenting. This is distilling. Is right there. Sorry, there's a little distilling, which might include how you get the propellant for your potato cannon. There we go. Okay. Let me see here. We're moving over to why am I looking here? I marked it with red for some reason. Hang on. I have to find it again. There it is. Okay. So here it is on page 166, David. This is why proofreading is so important. I have a critique of your book. Sir, on page 166, there is a typo. And here I find it. Number 3, hunt for fertilizer. It's your time to start saving your urine. Do it. Tell the rest of your comrades, if any have survived, to save theirs as well. Okay, this is nothing new. You guys have heard this before because, I've done quite a few things on fertilizer. However, down here at the bottom, it says, if you can, find a copy of my other book, Compost Everything. It tells you how to do this safely. We're talking about human manure. If you can't fit it, F-I-D, FID, sir, it should be find, F-I-N-D. This will be corrected in the next edition, I trust. There we go. But if you can't find it, that's fine. Just bury your waste beneath the soil and plant it in the next season. Setting up an outhouse is something that we did whenever I was young, because we were farming a mountaintop, rocky mountaintop, places where a grub hoe could not find purchase, so you needed a pickaxe. And after you dug the rocks out and used them to build a retaining wall, you could begin building soil and have someplace to grow. Lots of fun. And you discover that the rocks are a resource, which is weird, because you find rocks on flatland. You're like, these rocks, I don't want these rocks. Why are there rocks in my field? Every time I plow the field, break something, rocks everywhere, all these rocks, they just come to the surface. But of course, rocks are also a resource. And when you find yourself in land where there are no rocks and discover that you have to come up with other ways to do the things that you used to use rocks for, you realize that you kind of miss those rocks and wish you had them again. So to that end, Billy, whenever you get sick and tired of the rocks out there, come on out here to Flatland, and I will hand you a shovel and a rake, and give you the opportunity to see what it looks like to not to not have rocks. All right. Appendix 2, a survival garden from your pantry. I marked this with a blue ribbon. Why did I mark it with a blue ribbon? Because I thought this was a very valuable bit of information. I ran a series about things that you could grow from your pantry, or things that you can find that you can start up and start growing to grow for food. On the off chance you go, I got this handful of beans left that were at the bottom of the bag. Should we eat them, or should we take a risk of planting them? What do you think? And of course, the answer is, plant those things. You can grow more beans out of those. Even if they did come from the supermarket, they're probably still good. And that information and other information like that is here in the appendix on starting from your pantry. So let us review. Does this book indeed teach you how to grow crops without irrigation? Well, it talks about forms of irrigation and providing water to crops, not necessarily so much how to grow without irrigation. So B+. Find and use hand tools for tilling, weeding, and more. Good selection of hand tools. If you have these tools, you'll be just fine in most circumstances. I would recommend, definitely, depending upon circumstances, rocky ground, particularly heavy clay soil, particularly, get a pickaxe. It comes in handy. All right. Control pests naturally without relying on poisons. Did I cover the pest control section, or did I just say it was there and I said it was there and didn't really get into it. It is there. There are techniques and methods in there. Oh, yes, there are. I mentioned recipes and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So there are methods of controlling pests there. And I do believe he did mention something else about attracting the natural predator species, which is more along the lines of what we do, which is more a more active ecosystem. It's kind of hard to see the garden in it sometimes. Preserve the harvest. Yes, goes over preserving the harvest, several different techniques. I would kind of like, personally, in the next edition, if there was an illustration of a solar food dehydrator in there and in preserving the harvest. I think that would be a good addition to have. It doesn't have to be a detailed schematic. Just give people an idea so they can go, oh, I understand how this goes, and then they can build their own based upon what they have available to them. Okay. Figure out how much space you need to feed your family. I didn't open up to the page to this, but one of the calculations, I'm not going to go in there and read it out loud to you, but reading through there, one of the calculations that David made was approximately 4,000 square feet per person, which is a good average in the temperate zones, anywhere from like zone 3 on south down into the tropics. You probably don't need as much room in the tropics, come to think of it. 4,000 square feet for the garden is probably about enough space. Keep in mind, some of the space is going to be walkways, so make sure your walkways aren't overly wide. But he does also talk about spacing when growing without irrigation, in that if your spacing is wide enough and you're removing competing weeds, then you don't use up as much water. And but without the soil being covered, you're losing an awful lot to evaporation as well. So you're playing a game of tensions there with the balance of nature, trying to maintain an unnatural system, and it does require more effort than some of the techniques that I try to show you in our videos. But once again, different styles of gardening. If you're in the situations that David's been in or going those situations, certainly you're going to want to probably try to use those methods preferentially. All right. Where were we? Oh, let's see here. Figuring out how much space you'll need for your family. 4,000 square feet per person, I think is actually a fairly good estimate, by the way. Just going to say. And there are other considerations. I've done videos on this. Other people have done videos on this. How much space do you really need? It's variable. It depends upon what you want to do. Also depends upon how safe a gardener you want to be. How much do you want to accept what nature will grow for you? Those are all considerations. What will you eat? If you're not going to eat potatoes, it doesn't do you any good to spend a whole lot of your effort growing potatoes. Speaking of growing potatoes, something I've discovered recently is if you're using leaf litter, and I got this from Bull's Garden. If you're using leaf litter, particularly from coniferous trees, pines, stuff like that, partially decomposed leaf litter, forest garden setting, heavy mulch with that stuff, the potatoes go nuts. Nuts. I mean nuts. Try it out. It seems to work really well. All right. So how much space do you need? Yeah, it helps you figure out how much space you need. Plan a garden from items you'll find in a typical pantry. Yep, it has that section in there, and the information is accurate. I can verify that. Have peace of mind no matter what happens to the economy. That's going to require a little bit of work on the part of the reader. However, armed with knowledge, experience from doing it yourself, this will help you help guide you through gardening methods that are demonstrated to be effective, that will help build confidence, and that would give you peace of mind no matter what happens to the economy. So, yes, I would say the book does the job intended, and it is about maybe a third the size of the slightly more extensive but much less entertaining read, Living on an Acre, which the Department of Agriculture produced. So there you go. That is my review on Grow or Die from David the Good. I thank you very much for your kind attention, and we will now proceed with the rest of the show. Boom. Hi, how's everybody doing? Let me check the comments, see what's going on out there. All right, let me think. Hey, yeah, there you go. The bucket in the greenhouse. Dilute it with a bit of water, leave it in the sun. Whenever it starts turning green, you know that it has converted things into nitrate because that's what's growing the algae. And then you can go use it for fertilizer. Same as we do with the duck water, right? You can also I would steal all your soil. All your soil, I belong to me. Oh my! Of course, you can also use the method that we detailed of putting it into barrels or a corral or something, putting lots of organic matter in there and keeping it soaked with the urea, which will be converted by bacteria into nitrate, which will break down the browns in the organic matter, making very, 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 very dark soil very rapidly, which you may use as fertilizer, or you can refine further if you have need of the nitrate within it. All right. There you go. Whole broke up peel hot maters are happy. Yep. Red says it's the only thing good about Illinois is 3 foot of black soil. There was more than 3 foot of black soil on my grandma's farm. Just saying. But he engineered it that way. He engineered it to create and build soil. And it can be done. That was in the 1930s. Right. Oh, you're talking about the five ways to make liquid fertilizer. Yeah, I use food coloring to give you a visual representation that was not quite so oogie. Well, typically the stuff that you get from the company that begins with an MG, you know the one, yeah, MG comes a little scoop, little crystals. You put it in water, turns the water blue. Yeah, I was like, okay, here you go. Boom, beep. There you go. It's equivalent. Instead of blue, it's green. Brian said, just drove through rural Illinois. Beautiful. Last time I was in rural Illinois, I was on. Well, no, that's not true. Nope, that's not entirely true. I was in. I guess you'd say I was in rural Illinois, heading into Wisconsin. The last time I was in rural. No, it was coming back from Wisconsin. It was the last time I was in rural Illinois. But I don't think I was paying as much attention to the surroundings then, unfortunately. And I passed through, of course, on train once, but I was herding a bunch of Navy recruits at the time, so I didn't pay much attention to the scenery either, unfortunately. So I have not seen much of rural Illinois firsthand, only in pictures. It is pretty countryside. Funny thing about Chicago, though, right, is it used to be a cool town. I mean, it really did. I don't know what happened. I mean, yeah, it was a bit over there, but it was still a cool place to a certain extent. You wanted to stay away from the Brandy Greens. Other than that, it's a fairly cool place. Hmm. I have been out there actually. All right, let's see. Double check and make sure I had any late cameras. All right. Yeah, I've actually been outside that stadium. It was walking around, looking at the huge sign, and my buddies and I were looking at the post, going, "Hey, what if it's like one of those places where you like walk in between those posts and it's secretly a portal to another place? You could like travel through time or something by walking through there." We were weird. All right. Let's see here. There you go. Really grows a lot. Yep. In 1,500 square feet, you can grow an awful lot in a tiny space. You really can. Especially when you start growing up. You don't need as much space as you might think. But for variety, you need more. Always plant more than you think you need and plant more variety. Because some things will do good some years and some things will do bad some years. And that's just the way it's going to be. So the more variety you have, the more you can have redundancy, hits on the things that did well this year as opposed to other things. All right. Anyway. Chicago, many places are towns full of warehouses. I was almost gonna talk about something else tonight because I had one of the kids over, and a while back I used a little Napoleon Hill technique on him, and I handed him a clipboard with a sheet of paper. This is one of the guys that does work for us every now and then. I handed him a clipboard with a sheet of paper on it, and I said, "Okay, I want you to imagine, kind of like Elon Musk, the concept of I want to die on Mars, right? There's a lot of things that are wrapped up in that one particular statement. I want to die on Mars. What do you have to accomplish in your life for that to be how you die? So instead of thinking of this in a fatalistic way, like whenever I drop dead, what is it that I've accomplished? What does winning look like to me? The win condition. My life is over, but it doesn't matter because I've won. What does it look like?" And I said, "Go ahead and write that down." And that's been a couple of weeks, so he's had some time for it to percolate and stew in his head for a bit. And so we came back, and today we were talking about the basis for establishing a property management company where one can go about setting up opportunities for people who live in cities without a whole lot of money to get onto land in the country within 7 years or so, and to own their piece of land, to have a community already built into that situation with business opportunities, and of course the ownership of your own piece of the country that you're going to live in. We were talking about this quite a bit, and it's just one thing that chains off of another, that chains off of another, that chains off of another, that chains off another, chains off another, chains off another. I'm going to have to do a lot of credit to Mark Shepard, actually, for some of these ideas, which involves doing a lot of nesting businesses. Think of it this way. All right. You're going to start up a company that produces produce, food. People are going to be eating the food that you produce. At some point, you're going to get successful. Whenever you get successful, there are certain people out there that, for whatever reason, the defect in their particular character is they can't possibly accept that somebody is going to be successful and they have to suffer for whatever reason. That they don't apply themselves, but it doesn't really matter. They're going to try to get their success out of your success, and they're going to do it through litigation. This torpedoes a lot of small businesses early on. It really does. Lawyer fees, even if you can prove your case, the cost of fighting is prohibitive. So you want to be able to insulate yourself against that. Well, if you're going to be running a farm business or a market farm, some sort of thing like this, the land asset that you're using, the real property, is something you do not want to risk in this business. So how do you do this? You have a land management company that takes care of owning the land. Your farm leases the land. It doesn't own it. Somebody sues your farm, they don't get your assets. But here's the even better thing. The lease agreement that you have with the land management company needs to have a provision for minimum payment and expected payment. If you're making the minimum payment, they will not terminate your lease according to the contract. However, as your creditor, primary creditor, first creditor, priority creditor, the landlord management company gets the cash should you happen to go bankrupt. What does this matter? I'll explain. Whenever you set up your farm, you weren't just setting up your farm. You were purchasing a share in a corporation, a land management corporation. Your assets go to the land management corporation in case of a bankruptcy settlement, which means you don't lose your assets. And the person that wanted to sue you to get your stuff discovers that your farm owns nothing. It has nothing. It's in debt to the land management company in all actuality. And whenever you force a settlement, the land management company gets the assets. But the land management company has no liability for whatever your claim is, sir or madam. Mark Shepard, smart guy. Check him out sometime. So we talked about ways this could be done. And of course, the idea is by pooling resources with other families that want to get out of the cities and onto land in the country, you create the opportunity for those farms to exist. It's hard to find land in the country that is affordable in 1 acre lots. You got a small family, 1 acre is really all you need. In all actuality, a small family, family of 4, family of 5, 1 acre is fine. That's all you need to live on. However, you go out into the country, you're not finding 1 acre lots for sale. You're finding 10, 20, usually 20 or more, often 40 and more. And that means more money. I was looking at property prices in Osage County, which is just in the north of us, and they're running about $3,000 an acre for properties. There are a few decent ones out there. And if you were to have, say, 10 families get together, and I'll lay out the idea here. There are more specifics involved. You get 10 families together that would all like to have homesteads in the country. but can't come up with the kind of cash that you need to buy that spread out in the country that you need. We're talking good 80, 90 acres, 100 acres or so. Fairly decent sized piece of property. Can't afford it. There's no way. Not on the kind of salaries that people who are in the younger coming up generation. We're talking millennials, Generation Z's coming up, young people trying to make it. You have to have roommates now, and probably work 2 jobs, and pool your resources to get by. How are you going to get out onto land whenever you're barely keeping your head above water as it is? Well, can you come up with $50 a month? Can you come up with $80 a month? $50 a month, $80 a month for a period of years to invest in your share of the farm. Now, the farm is you'll have to decide amongst your corporation whenever you're forming this up, how big of an overall parcel you're going to get. But the concept is each investor in this farm operation will receive 1 acre of the farm overall. That is theirs to build their domicile on and do with whatever they want. Whether or not they proceed forward with additional development of the farm itself is going to be up to them. They could sell their interest in the farm afterwards, but their 1 acre, that's theirs. You are now out of the city. You've got your acre. You're adjacent to a farm with neighbors that you know that are part of a community that you helped establish whenever you created this corporation. Now, beyond that, you have the farm property itself. And the way we have this kind of set up is the parcel has each 1 acre separated from the others enough that you don't have people right next door to you on top. You have your space and you have your privacy, but your neighbors are over there if you need them, and over there if you need them. And the farm's right there if you need it. And your participation in the farm would determine your level of profit, because you are a partner in the business of the farm, unless you sell off your farm interest. There you go. Beyond that, whenever other properties are being developed, you could always buy another homestead stake in another area and set other people up, lease it out, so on and so forth. It's a good way, once it gets started, that it expands and grows from there. And Carolyn is saying, yeah, on 1 acre you can grow vegetables and chicken and fruit trees, but not cows, pigs, goats, or sheep. Correct. This is why you want to have a farm, but what you need yourself is not that much. As a matter of fact, you need about 40 acres or so to operate a good functioning dairy. That's way more cattle than one family needs. You need someplace to market the milk. Well, it just happens that if you have a homesteading community that's already been built, you can have the dairy operation, and everybody has access to the milk from the dairy operation. You own the cows. It's your dairy operation. Interesting. So you have your milk, but you also have your own personal private space for your own personal private garden. You do the things that you want to. And of course, surplus from the farm that generates cash profits. As a shareholder, you get dividends from farm operations. The farm can also do fun things with its operating capital, like invest in other real estate opportunities, which once again repay dividends for the farm, which each investor that is a member of this corporation gets to share in. So fun stuff. We broke it down to about $80. What was it? Hang on a second. We're still working on the fine details, right? I'm thinking that the period for investment should be 7 years total. 7 years, and here's something cool. You'll love this. Numerology, right? But 7 years, 52 weeks a year is 364. One short of 365, so almost like 365 days in a year, but it's like seven years of weeks is that much. 364 weeks. If you were to put back a certain amount of money for 364 weeks, how much would you have? Well, let's say it was $50 a week, right? I put back $50 a week for 364 weeks, and that's $18,200. So for not a whole lot of money, and you could probably imagine getting this into your budget, There you go. Hey, look, we're investing in this real estate investment, the land management company. We're going to get a farm out of it. It's going to cost us $50 a week for our investment. And then at the point where the company has enough money to proceed with buying the property, all the shareholders, you're going to have 10 of them, right? To make it manageable. You don't want to have more than, you don't really want to have more than about 10 to 14, maybe 15 topside of partners in this sort of venture, because getting everybody to agree on something, the more people you have, gets harder. It gets really, really hard. Once again, reference Mark Shepard, cooperatives, a lot of people involved makes it hard to get things sorted out. So keep it to the point where the personalities are manageable, and you can have a meeting with 12 people that people are not constantly shouting over each other, and you can get something accomplished. You look at the property as a group, all of you come out looking and say, do we want to proceed with this particular lot? Do we want to buy this parcel? Is this the one we want to build? What can we do with it? Where would I put my place? And if everybody says, yeah, we want to go with that, pull the trigger on it, boom. But you pull the trigger on it, the rest of the money investiture goes to development of the farm. Once all the money is invested, right? At that point, any one of the shareholders that wants to opt out of being involved in the operation of a profitable farm can go, okay, look, you guys, thank you very much. You guys got the well dug, you got the pipes laid, you've got the water running up to my place here. I can get power from wherever or set it up myself. That'll be fine. Thank you very much. We're just going to live out here in the country and enjoy you wonderful neighbors and admire the view of the farm from here, and everything will be fine. And absolutely you can do that. But assuming that we're building profitable farm business, why not hang around for the residual income? So that's the kind of thing that we were cooking up. And of course, we were looking at this nifty places where, if you're out in the country, you have these places where the roads come together at every mile. You have those 1 mile intersections, right? And the area immediately around these 1 mile intersections are actually valuable real estate for a variety of different reasons. But the way we wanted to set this up is the individual homestead parcels aren't on the corners. They're a little bit further down the roads in the different directions. Oh, Kitty wants to come back in. She's climbing the door way out there if you hear the noise. All right, so those intersections are part of farm property, and this is kind of interesting because the way we drew it, I think we called this one over here Forest Acres LLC. So it's its own incorporation, 10 shareholders, privately owned corporation, right? But the same management company can come over here, and we're going to call this one Laughing Duck Farms, and it's, I think we said this one was 300 or 200 acres. This one's 300 acres. Like it doesn't really matter how big they are, as long as they're of a large enough size that you can create a profitable farm business. 40 acres, like I said, is kind of large enough for a dairy operation if you wanted to have that. Then this one over here is, what's this? Okay, so this one is BS name because I couldn't think of anything. And this one is the other farm. Essentially, 4 different corporations that come together at this intersection. So the 1 mile intersection. The property at the intersection is all farm property, but this is one farm, that's another farm, that's another farm, that's another farm. That's 4 separate businesses, right? That are interrelated through their associations with the land management company, but they're not the same business, and they're all separate from each other and firewalled from liability issues. Because once again, some people would like to take things that other people have worked to build, and you want to firewall yourself from that thing happening. This is the way you can do it. Anyway, guys, wow, fun stuff. Brian's taking off. He's going to charge his compost. Yeah, you have to start off with water. You can't do anything without the water, period. End of story. It's not going to work. And once again, drilling a well. There are a lot of things, right? You go out to do your homestead. There's a lot of duplication of effort that people do on homesteads. Everybody wants to have a cow because they want to have the milk. Okay, well, the cow's in milk for a certain amount of the year, and then it has to have a period off, and then it can freshen again. You can probably keep it in milk for about consistently, maybe 200 days out of the year, 165 that you can't. You need at least 2 milk cows. You got to freshen them up. You need a bowl. 1 bowl is a bit much for just 2 cows. To make it more effective, you need more cows. Now you've got more milk. There are problems associated with raising cattle for milk. small family operation, you're better with goats or sheep. That keeps your numbers manageable. But if you want to have dairy, if you want to have beef and cow's milk, that's great. It's a great profitable business too. And that means it's something that the community can be involved in owning a piece of, which is useful. And of course, initial expenses. Where's the water going to come from? Does every homesteader need to drill a well? Or can you have a good well, an expensive well that's paid for with pumping, good quality pumping, that's paid for by the farm that the people are corporation owners of, and they can get their water delivered by the farm? Hey, is that another revenue stream that goes back to the farm? Yes, I think it is. If the farm chooses to sell the water to the residents in that particular area. So that's something else to consider, right? But yeah, without the water, you can't do anything at all. So you have to start out there. Collectivizing, pooling your resources to be able to get access to that water, to the drilling equipment, to get to the water, and the kind of pumps that you need, and the power that you need to get it up and distribute it. All that's big expenses, and you don't necessarily have to pay for that yourself as the individual homesteader if you've created a homestead community. So creating the homestead community gives you access to all these other tools, including talent as well from the other homesteaders that are involved in this community. It's effectively a cooperation. You form it up as a corporation with individual shareholders, which would be the individual homesteads that are a part of the overall farm. So you have farm business and homesteads. Each homestead's 1 acre. The farm itself is the whole thing minus the individual acreage of your shareholders. So there you go. That's kind of the homesteading partnership agreement concept in a nutshell, and how you get to the point where you can actually monetize your dream. Because $20,000, imagine this, $20,000 doesn't seem like a lot. It doesn't. But if you have half of that for investment in the farm and the other half for the investment in the property itself, that's $10,000 per person. 10 people involved, that's $100,000. $100,000 at around $3,000 an acre gets you about 30 acres. That's not really enough. So $3,000 an acre is kind of high for property costs. Hopefully, we're going to experience a dip in property values before too awfully long, which means that if you have the cash in hand, for example, you and a bunch of other people have been building your cash in hand supply, being ready to take advantage of these dips in land prices whenever people are forced and leveraged to sell, then you can walk up and go, "Hey, look, I see you're in a jam there. I know you wanted 200,000 for this property. We've got 120 cash right now. Will you take 120,000 cash right now?" And done. And you can get those acreages because you have the cash in hand to take advantage of people that are in a leveraged position, which is, it sounds horrible, but when Granddad started up his farm back in the 1930s, people were desperate, people were selling, and he said, "Hey, look, this is the greatest time in the world to buy land." And he happened to have the cash in hand at the time. Problem is, most of us aren't in a position to be able to have enough cash in hand to be able to properly exploit these opportunities whenever they present, which is exactly the reason to corporate. All right. So anyway, that's it. That's it, guys. Grow or die. Grow or Die. Excellent advice for the age we're living in, and not a bad book either. Not a bad book either. There are some definitely some reference materials in here that are worth noting. There we go. There we go. In conclusion, it was a good book, and I recommend it to a friend. You remember this? Remember those from grade school? Oh my gosh. Right. So yeah, you have to look look before you leap. Make sure you're not getting involved in a situation where you cannot do this sort of deal or etc. This means you need to get in touch with an attorney if you want to start one of these up. Have a talk with your attorney and go from there. It's a way that you can make land ownership approachable, not just for you, but for a lot of other people as well. So there we go. Billy says, we do have backup access to the natural spring down into the holler. I'm just shy and worried about asking the guy that owns the 168 acres behind us if I can use it. He doesn't. I'm assuming there's going to be more to type there. Yeah. Yep. So, 168 acres is a hunting property. Yeah. That's a lot of acres for just hunting. Yeah. Now, one of the nice things about this sort of structure is, depending upon the needs that you have, you can set up your homestead space in trusts. In other words, you can establish a trust, and as a trustee, you have access to the property. So there are other ways of putting it so that you have you have your legal right to be on the land and to do what you wish to do with the land protected. And you can also protect yourself from liability issues, which is fun. But okay, so not everywhere zones, every area literally you can do anything where she's at, right? And it all depends upon where you're at and how intrusive the local criminal syndicate is. Here they're not particularly bad. I think my insurance company is worse than the county government as far as being officious unnecessarily. So it just really depends. Meanwhile, I know there's a lot of people out in Tennessee that their county government is just overbearing and up in their business constantly. It's like, wow, like I can barely imagine being in a position where you have to go around and constantly ask somebody else for permission for things that you can do with your own land. It just seems weird. But that, people do have those circumstances. Anyway, guys, it's been an hour. I covered the book. Tennessee, stay away from the seas. There's right. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, Billy, you're out there in Tennessee, aren't you? Yeah, lots of folks out in Tennessee. Speaking of folks out in Tennessee, I actually had should I brag? So I had John from SWE Tactical visit my website today. He didn't buy anything. He was just looking. That's okay. We'll send him a shopping cart recovery. So Billy is saying, stay away from the cities in Tennessee, but if you see the soy and corn farms, you're good. There you go. And yeah, corn will be there soon. I got it mailed off yesterday. Ordinarily, I do the orders on Monday, but I for some reason I was doing something else on Monday and I didn't get out and about. So what the heck was I doing on Monday? I don't know. It's spring. I'm running everywhere all at once. Joe's showing up at 65 minutes. Yeah, right. Get ready to sign off, Joe. You're late. Oh, okay. Language. Sorry. Pay no attention to what I just said. So I got it mailed off on Tuesday. It should be, it should be there by the end of the week, by Friday, I imagine, if not before. Oh, awesome. Post progress on the corn. I took the opportunity whenever I was weighing it out, because I was mixing in a fresh batch of seed that I had not counted after weighing yet. So I said, okay, we're going to scale it out and then I'm going to count. So I actually hand counted. I hand counted your order and discovered that 60 grams was 389 seeds. 389 seeds, and double check and make sure that they're all good. Everything's intact and they're ready to germinate. 389 seeds. And so, as that was not the 400 that I said you should get, I went ahead and added a couple more pinches of seeds to bring it up over 400. So I think in the future I'll just keep it at 64 instead of 60. It should. I mean, the package was only about a nickel or a dime more than the estimated cost of shipping. So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. Not like good Lord, the cannas. Oh wow. Hopefully, if I remember to pull my canna roots up and put them on peat moss at the end of the year and only sell cannas from that, they won't weigh as much because those roots were easily a pound each that I shipped out. I had you know, if you look at the videos where the Shopify app is down there below, Canna Indica Purpurea sold out. It sold out day one, and I spent a lot. I spent most of the profits on shipping. We'll put it that way. We didn't make much profits, but those roots are just massive. Lots and lots of good food in those. So hopefully we'll have plenty more next year, and we'll be able to fill some orders for those. And I'll remember to get them on peat moss. They'll shrink a bit over the winter on peat moss. They'll lose some of their volume, and hopefully that'll make them lighter. Because mainly you're paying for water weight to ship water. That's what I was doing. It's paying to ship water. They get a little dehydrated, they shrink down, they'll be lighter, and they'll ship cheaper. That'd be better. They'll still sprout, they'll still grow, it'll be great. Whenever I got these things, they were about the size of my pinky, I swear. I got these little tiny roots. They were itsy bitsy, like the size of my pinky, some about the size of my thumb, itsy tiny bitty rhizomes. I was like, okay. I didn't expect this to be anything more than an edible flower whenever I planted the cannas. I put them in, they came up, they grew, went, flowers, nice, ate the flowers. Okay, they're edible. They didn't taste like much of anything. It's kind of like lettuce, except it's colorful. They weren't sweet the way daylilies are sweet. Daylily flowers are actually very tasty. They aren't just like a substitute for lettuce. They're better. But cannas is like, yeah, it's a substitute for lettuce, except it's colorful. Okay, we could deal with that. But then whenever I went to go dig them up to save them, because just in case it got really cold and they didn't make it, I saw how big those roots went. I went, oh, okay. I see what the real value of this plant is. It's not the pretty flowers. It's not even the biomass. It's these massive starchy rhizomes that will feed an army and will grow whenever you can't grow potatoes. There you go. Very southern Illinois. There you go. Southern Illinois, Shawnee National Forest. So you're not too far away from the the mounds and stuff like that. I find the mounds fascinating because I think of what they were really doing whenever they built them, and I think what they were really doing was something a lot more ingenious than, oh, we're gonna build religious structures and have an observatory looking at the stars. You may notice this if you look at the architectural, not the architectural, the city blueprints, the way the streets are laid out in modern cities. Modern cities are laid out in alignment with the stars. And they're not laid out in alignment with the stars for any religious purpose. They're laid out in alignment with the stars because it's easier for you to shoot an alignment with the stars on the horizon that don't change any more than 1 degree every 72 years than it is to kind of guess at it. It gives you a stable reference point. But one thing you may notice is every 72 years, those calculations go off by a degree. So if you're looking at ancient ruins and you're divorced from your mind the idea that they were doing astrological alignment for religious purposes and they were doing it for engineering and structural purposes, then you can look and see the age of a city based upon the way it changes in alignment. How many degrees? Every degree is 72 years from this building expansion to that building expansion. If they're off by 3 degrees, multiply that by 72 years, plus or minus 72, and you'll have an approximation for how far apart each building expansion is in an ancient ruin. So, if you happen to be involved in archaeology or getting your degree and want to go out and make a name for yourself in the field some point in your professional career, make sure that you survive long enough to publish your findings, but you now have something that you can go wow your colleagues with whenever you do publish. If you enjoy it, that's all I've got for you tonight, good people. As always, I hope you found today's video informative or entertaining. If you did, you know what to do. I will catch you guys next time. And until then, oh, let's see. We're going to be working on planting the forest garden this week. So hopefully we'll get all of that done. Lots and lots of fun stuff coming up. But that's all I've got for you tonight. As always, hope you found the video informative and entertaining. If you do, you know what to do. I will catch you next time. Until then, get out there and get growing. Bye-bye, everybody. Good night. Sleep tight. I know I'm going to. I've got lots of work to do tomorrow. All right. Bye-bye.